which I think is interesting. But so it's an opportunity, we have an opportunity to behave the way that we would like to, even when other people are not. Support, I think, is perhaps the greatest, most important ingredient for the recipe of success. Tom Osborne said, friends are like elevator buttons. They either take you up or they take you down. I always encourage my clients to look at their support networks and look at who they have in their network and who's bringing them up, who's lifting them up, and who's bringing them down. And I really encourage people to look at those toxic relationships and reevaluate them. Do they need to shift some boundaries? Or do they need to re-examine them or possibly even end some relationships? Or do they need to nurture some new relationships so that they have more support? Support is such an important part of success. I really believe in having a personal and professional advisory board. In my own life, I have, my therapist, I have a mentor, I have a massage therapist. The people in my life who I turn to for my health and wellness. My best friend, who I met at ERS, so I'm so happy to have that experience. So those things are really, really important. I remember one of my clients years ago in therapy, she had such a dysfunctional family and her relationships were she repeated that pattern in her relationships. And she said to me after a year or so of therapy, she said, Joyce, I think that this is my first healthy relationship. And she said, I think this is what it feels like to be known and to be cared about and to be understood and respected. And she was like, now I've got to kind of clear out some of these other relationships and build some new ones. And I thought that was pretty amazing, and I think it probably also was true. Give and share whenever possible. Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. I give coaching to therapists in private practice on how to do marketing and get more referrals. And I've had a lot of people say, why the heck do you do that? Why would you do that when you own a practice in Chicago? And I do it because I believe in the abundance theory. I believe that there's plenty of work for all of us, and that we don't need to hoard and be scared, that when you share resources and knowledge and information and you help each other, that karma is going to come back at you. And I really believe that to be true, and that's been my own experience. When I've helped people, sometimes I've learned from them, and sometimes they've then referred to me. So I believe that in my personal life as well, and that's how I go about marketing my business too. And that's another thing that I learned from Bill Heffernan, is that when I meet someone, instead of thinking, how am I going to get referrals out of this person, which is, nobody likes that feeling, I think, how can I help this person? What do they do? Who do I know that could help them? Could I send them a referral? Could I do something useful for them? By giving and sharing, then you're establishing a relationship with someone, and then you're establishing that flow, and those good things are going to come back at you. Any questions or comments or anything? Identify your gifts. The author of The Alchemist said to realize one's destiny is a person's only obligation. I really believe that if there's one thing that I've learned in 20 years of counseling clients, it's that anxiety and depression and unhappiness occur when people are living their life in a way that isn't congruent with who they really are. If they're not living authentically, they're not going to be happy. And so part of each of our own journeys is discovering what is our unique gift? And how are we going to set up our lives in our work and in our personal relationships so that we're celebrating and using that gift? I think that's part of our mission, what we've got to figure out. I remember when I was in 4th grade, I was put in a gifted program. And I was a little confused as to why I was in the gifted program. I think my parents even were a little confused as to why I was in the gifted program. Because I was there with all the math and science whiz kids, and I was not. And the teacher said, Joyce is relationally gifted. And I thought, that is really interesting given what I do today. And thank God for teachers. How cool is that she identified that when I was 9 years old? And wouldn't it be great if we all had a teacher that could help us identify that when we were young? So I think for each of us and for our clients, helping them understand what are their unique gifts and their unique talents. And I think many of us push compliments away, especially women. I think we're socialized to do that. People give us a compliment. No, love your outfit. Oh, no, I got it at TJ Maxx like 10 years ago. We have to learn how to accept compliments and honor our gifts and honor our strengths. I once heard a developmental psychologist say, we are all gifted and we are all disabled. And I really think that's true. I failed my driver's license test 4 times. My best friend was so irritated with me, she stole orange pylons and set up a horse and made me practice, and then had me use her little rabbit car so that I would finally pass the maneuverability test. So I encourage you to think about your own unique gifts and talents. I am really interested in the psychology of money. Louise Hay says, your prosperity consciousness is not dependent on money. Your flow of money is dependent on your prosperity of consciousness. So the psychology of money, I think it's so interesting. I think we learn our relationships with money from our families of origin. So patterns of spending versus saving, having versus not having, what money means to you. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it stressful? Is there enough? Is there not enough? And how do you manage it? What does it mean? And I think in this field, one thing that really bugs me is how people say that this field is not lucrative. That kind of bothers me, because I think that if you love what you do and you work hard, I think any field can be lucrative. I really believe that. I think that if you buy into that, then you're accepting that. I remember when I started my private practice, I have a colleague a male psychologist, and he was starting his private practice, and I said to him, I just need to make $60,000. And he said, $60,000? He said, I want to make 100. And I said, oh, you do? Do you think that's possible? And he said, yeah. And that year, I made $60,000, and he made 100. And I thought, that's interesting. So since then, I've said, well, what if I allow myself to make more? And things have changed. So I encourage you to change your thinking. And the same thing happened when I got out of graduate school. I was like, oh, I have $50,000 of loans. Starting salaries were like $18,000 to $25,000. I was like, I just need a job that starts at $25,000. And I got a job starting at $25,000, but not more. So I wasn't even thinking that was possible. So I encourage you to think about, what does money mean to you? Louise Hay has an interesting book audio tape called Receiving Prosperity. And Marianne Williamson has one called The Law of Divine Compensation, which I think is also really great. Developing your vision. First, say to yourself, what would you be? And then do what you have to do. So when I started Urban Balance, I went and saw a career counselor. And I said to her, I really want to have kids, and that's really, really important to me, but I also have this desire to start a group practice. And I don't know how to prioritize the timing of those two things. And she said, Joyce, always plan your career in the context of your life, not the other way around. And I never went back to her because she was so damn good. And I've referred probably 100 people to her since. But I thought that was so helpful. Always plan your career in the context of your life. And when you're developing your vision, I always like this idea of the most is what you get for, is what Dr. Phil says. So I always ask my clients, if you had a magic wand, what would you want? And I named Urban Balance because I wanted work-life balance. I love my work, and I knew that I wanted to continue work when I had my daughters, who are now 12 and 9. And I knew that if I were a stay-at-home mom, I would be depressed. And I knew that if I worked 1 million hours a week, I would not feel good about myself as a mom. And so I wanted to have a situation where I could do the things that I really love. Like, I love marketing and public speaking, and I like the business end of private practice, and make an income when I wasn't seeing clients so that I could be home with my children. And that has come to fruition. I haven't had a nanny for my kids since they were 2. My youngest was 2, and I've been home with them before and after school, with exceptions here and there if I have a meeting here or there, but largely I've been home, and I've taken 6 weeks off every year. One time when my daughter Celeste was 4, I remember being home a couple weeks in December, and I was arguing with her about putting on her hat. And she said, Mom, can you just go back to Urban Balance? But I do think having a vision of what you want is really important, both personally and professionally. And having that professional vision and then having it support your personal vision. Create your ideal work-life balance. I was just talking about that. No one on their deathbed ever said, I wish I spent more time at work. I've only, in my career, I've only taken 3 business trips. And I just went on one to Washington, D.C. I'm currently serving as the president of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association, and also president-elect of the Illinois Counseling Association. So we got to go to Washington, D.C. and meet with the state representatives and talk about funding for professional counselors for Medicare, for veterans, and for school counselors. And it was a really, really cool experience. I loved it. And I'm interested in getting more involved in the American Counseling Association, and they said, would you be interested in joining the governing council? I said, maybe someday, when my kids are a little bit older. That would be really cool. I think a really awesome experience. And my point about that is that when I was there, somebody said, you own a practice that has 6 locations and close to 70 therapists that work for Urban Balance? And he said, you must work all the time. Like, do you have like a pager? Are you like on call all the time? And I was like, what? And I was like, no, not at all. Like, I'm totally relaxed. Like, it's the opposite. I have really great, smart people that work at Urban Balance so that I don't have to do that. So that I didn't even think about it. It was so foreign to me that he even asked that. Because I've set it up so that it's functioning without me. Because that was the intention. So that I could make a living doing the things that are important to me, whether it's being with my children or doing advocacy that's important to me, and then I can let go of that. Obviously, if something happens, I'm available, but I trust that the people that work with Urban Balance are doing a good job, and I don't need to micromanage and be involved in that way. So that was part of that intention. Wayne Dyer again says, our intentions create our reality. David Hawkins also said, everything you see happening is the consequence of that which you are. So intentions are different than goals. Goals are like measurable objectives. It's the difference between I want to lose 10 pounds being a goal, and an intention is I want to live healthfully. I want to eat nutritiously and I want to exercise regularly. Those are intentions. They're like healthy ways of being. And it's our intentions that create our reality. So I encourage you to ask your clients and to think about your intentions. I believe in synchronicity. I don't believe in accidents. And I believe that sometimes people come into our lives for a reason. I like this quote: we do not create our destiny, we participate in its unfolding. Synchronicity works as a catalyst towards the working out of that destiny. So as I think about my life, I think about pivotal people in my life who I've met, who have shaped and molded my life, that are important to me. And some of them I've met in synchronistic ways, powerful coincidences. And I think about when I met Bill Heffernan of Employee Resource Systems. It was, I think, about 1998, and I was at the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, and I was attending a meeting on drug-free workplace programs. And Bill was there. It was a small meeting, and I think Logan was small. And Bill was talking about his son Logan, and he was speaking with people there, and I was observing him, and I thought, this man is very kind. And then he started speaking about drug-free workplace programs, and I thought, this man is very smart. And I realized that the man I was currently working for was neither. So I did what I thought was smart, and I reached out to Bill and I sent him my resume. And I'm so grateful because that opportunity to work at ERS gave me the building blocks that I needed for my professional, for urban balance. I never in a million years could have had urban balance had I not had my experience at ERS. And I had my first public speaking experience with Bill at ERS, and Bill brought me to a client company, and he had me speak about EAP for 15 minutes to a group of managers, and then Bill spoke afterwards. And I was so nervous. I had a little cue card, and my voice was shaking, and I was so terrified to public speak. And I did that, and then Bill got up, and he was natural and relaxed, and I sat down, and the audience members were sitting in these desks that were in a horseshoe, and our PowerPoint, if it even was then, it was on like some floppy disk, was in the center of this horseshoe. And I knew that Bill and I were going to be leaving as soon as he was done with his talk, and this meeting was going to be continuing. And so I thought, oh, maybe it would be helpful if I just like slipped under my desk and grabbed this floppy disk, and then Bill and I could like leave when he's done. So I thought this was a really good idea, and I went for my seat and I get under the desk. Mind you, I was 26 years old, so my thinking was a little different. And the desk had one of those privacy guard shields, so it had like a wall on the back that went but like this far from the ground. But I already went under it, and there was like a woman sitting next to me, so I'm like, well, I can't like go back up. So I just went for it. So I'm under the thing, like this, approaching the middle of the horseshoe circle, like this. And Bill's speaking, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, Joyce!" And all the people in the group look at me, and I'm like this. And this adrenaline, I realized, like, was a bad idea. And this adrenaline kicks in, and I somehow pop up into the center of the horseshoe, and Bill goes, "Oh!" And like the whole group's like, "Wow!" And I grabbed the disc, and I just decided, like, I just had to act like it was normal and just like go with it. So I just grabbed it, and then I started to walk, and like people stood up and started clearing the desks, like, "Please don't get on the floor again." So I just acted like it was normal and sat back down, and Bill finished, and then we left, and then we got in Bill's car, and Bill was crying, laughing for like 10 minutes, couldn't drive, couldn't speak, was laughing so hard, and I was like, "Bill, stop it, stop it." And I was like, "You cannot tell anyone when we get back to ERS that I did that." And he was like, "Joyce," he was like, your presentation was fine." He's like, "You did a good job, you can present again." He's like, "Just don't get on the floor." Again. So that was.
I just want to say, no one would know that because I've never told anyone that story.
Thank you for honoring that. But yeah, so thank you for giving me my first speaking experience, and I learned a lot from that. And I don't think I've done that again since then, rolled on the floor. So that is good. And you also told me that when I speak, that you said, "Joyce, you're good at telling stories, and you should tell stories when you speak." And so that is another thing that I learned from you. So thank you for that. So people come into our lives for a reason. So radiating warmth and light. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So we have a choice in our lives to make people feel good. We have that choice every day, to be a positive influence or a negative influence, and I think it is so important to be conscious of that and to make that choice. I really believe in the importance of meditation, and I think that when you meditate, you kind of reboot your mind, your body, and your spirit, and get yourself in a positive space where you're able to kind of shine your light and be positive with others. So I encourage you to do that if you can. Viewing setbacks as opportunities for growth. Helen Keller said, "Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved." I really believe this is true, and I think sometimes, as a parent, I notice this, that I think sometimes parents, we want to shield our children from challenges or mistakes, and they are opportunities for growth and for learning. And for our clients and for ourselves, sometimes our challenges are wonderful learning experiences, albeit sometimes they are painful. Eckhart Tolle said, "Some changes look negative on the surface, but you will soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new to emerge. Suffering carves wisdom and awareness deep into your soul." I made these diagrams up. I would say that progress is not linear. These didn't translate super well. But my point is that we don't go from 0 to 10. We don't kind of get better all in a nice, neat line and just kind of evolve. We move forward, and then we have setbacks. And then we move forward again. And then we have a setback. And then we move forward again. And so I call these loops. We go through loops in life. And we see ourselves and we see our clients go through this. I think we all experience, to some degree, anxiety, depression, different relationship challenges. And so we will go through those different loops in our life. I had one client, or one reader on my Psych Central blog said, Joyce, if your diagrams were accurate with these loops, he said people would actually be moving back in time, those loops, but I'm sticking by it because that's how it feels. So I'm just keeping that there. But again, progress is not linear.
Well, don't we regress when we have challenges sometimes? So
Right.
we'll be back in time.
That's exactly how I feel about it. So life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. So I'm going to share with you a personal experience. My husband Keith and I have been together for 25 years. And we have been married for 18. And in the last few weeks, we have made the decision to divorce. And it's a really scary, very surreal decision, hard decision. And we told our children, and we told our children 2 days before our 18th wedding anniversary. And I said to Keith, I said, what are we gonna do about our wedding anniversary? And he said, we're gonna celebrate it. We're gonna celebrate it with our kids. And he said, because we've had 25 years of a successful relationship and 18 years of marriage that have brought these children, and we're gonna celebrate it. And it's part of our love story. And part of our love story is that we're letting each other go because it's part of the evolution of our consciousness. And part of what we've always said to each other is that, I mean, we made it from prom until now, and people have asked us, how have you done that? And I've always said it's because we've allowed each other to grow in the context of our relationship. And we had some really honest conversations with each other, and we realized we're not growing anymore, despite a lot of work. And so the context needs to change, and that's okay. So again, in life, sometimes we experience these hard experiences, whether it's a death, a divorce, a loss of a job, an illness. Life throws us a curveball. It's not what we expected. It's not the life we thought we were going to have. But it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to look at things differently, and it's an opportunity to grow in our evolution of consciousness. Resiliency. I have a client who had a really difficult life, and he actually left his family when he was 16 years old, and he educated himself, went to college, he has a master's degree, he has a huge job at a hospital, and is one of the most healthy, compassionate, normal human beings I know. And I said to him, like, how do you do this? And he was like, well, what was my other choice? You know, you get up and you face it and you keep moving forward. So and I thought, wow, if you could bottle that, sometimes you don't know how strong you are until you choose to be resilient. I like this quote, being defeated is often a temporary condition, giving up is what makes it permanent. One of my favorite career stories is I have, at Urban Balance, years ago I created something called pre and post baby couples counseling, and which I really believe in. It's kind of like premarital counseling, but it hadn't really taken off. It was a smaller program, it was doing okay, but it hadn't taken off in the way that I had hoped. And I was on vacation, and I got a text message from our intake coordinator, and it said, the Wall Street Journal is trying to reach you. Would you like to take the call? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And so I was in flip-flops, and I had like goldfish for my kids, and I was like, not in the right mindset. And I spoke with the Wall Street Journal. Anyway, I ended up being quoted in a cover story along with John Gottman, and it was the most read article of the week. And it was pretty amazing, and it was on how having children affects your relationship. By the way, I think therapists always specialize in their own issues. So I think that's always interesting when people are like, I specialize in eating disorders, and, you know, anyway. So that experience led to then I had a publisher reach out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in writing a book on the topic. This has now turned into an exhaustive process of tons of rejection for me. I've had this book, I've been working on this damn book proposal for like, I don't know, 5 years, 4 years or something, but I think I finally found the right publisher, and I had a really interesting conversation with her, and she goes, oh, no, that's not the book that you're supposed to write. You're supposed to write a different book. You're supposed to write a book on self-compassion, which I thought was so interesting because I do think that we all specialize in our own issues, and that was my issue at the time, was how a baby affects your relationship. And where I'm at now, and what I'm learning now, is about self-compassion. And that is maybe what I'm going to write about. So anyway, my point is, be resilient. Self-love. I believe in the importance of self-love. Self-love is not narcissism. Self-love is about care and compassion and caring about yourself. Love is the currency of life and what connects us all. So Buddha said you can search throughout the entire universe for somebody who's more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserves your love and affection. So I do think each of us has a journey, again, to turn down that inner critic, to choose to be our own best friend, to choose work that is meaningful to us, to choose relationships that nurture our heart and our spirit, to set up our lives in a way that's congruent with who we really are, and to live honestly and openly. I think vulnerability is sexy. I have a t-shirt that says that. My kids won't let me wear it. They think it's embarrassing. But I think that that's important. To learn to love yourself. And when you love yourself, then you're able to truly be honest with others about who you are, and you're able to love them and accept them for who they are. None of us is perfect at all. We all have our issues. So persevere. Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising up every time we fail. By Ralph Waldo Emerson. So I think this is important, whether it's in your own personal journey or your professional journey or your business, that we all have to grow as individuals, as couples, as families, as community, and to keep working on ourselves. I mean, part of what I love about our work is that we're helping people grow in their consciousness and their awareness. And it's deep and important and powerful work. We had a dinner party once, and we were talking about our children and how will we know when we've done a good job raising them? Like, what does it mean to be a success? And people were saying, like, yeah, how do you know when you've been a success? Like, what's the definition of that? And so this is my own personal definition of success. I said, success is to live openly, authentically, and lovingly in alignment with the highest good of self and others, and to the greatest extent possible. So I do think that greatest extent possible, like continuing to grow. Like, we can't stagnate. You've got to keep learning. You've got to keep pushing. You've got to keep growing. Whether it's in your relationships, your spiritual life, your psychological development, your hobbies, your sports, your fitness, to keep growing. Gratitude. I do believe in the laws of attraction. I like this quote from Epictetus. He said, He is a wise man who does not grieve for things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. I always encourage clients to keep a gratitude journal. I'm part of a gratitude group on Facebook where we post something like once a day that we're grateful for. I think if you just train your brain to look at the good parts. My 12-year-old, I noticed she was getting really negative, and this was like when she was in 4th grade, and I got her a book that was called No More Stinking Thinking, and it like had you start to look at the good parts of things, and we can train ourselves to do that, and I think it's so important. I still have clients. I have one client who calls me on a yearly basis on her birthday and thanks me for the correct diagnosis. She had for years been treated unsuccessfully for depression, and I diagnosed her with bipolar disorder, and then her medication helped her, and she continues to call to thank me for that. I think the gratitude that we receive from our clients too can sometimes be pretty amazing and moving. It's such important work that we do. So I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm grateful for your attention. I'm grateful for all of the work that you do with your clients and for this time. And my wish for you is that this talk today inspire you in some way. I have, with your materials, I have a handout. And with this handout, what you can do, if you would please pull it out, if you could just take, it's about 11:30 right now. If you need to use the restroom, go ahead and use the restroom. I do. There may be extras on seats by you. If you could take a few moments. Do you need them, John? If you could take a few moments to complete this. We'll take about 10 minutes for this. And then we'll just have some discussion, and then we'll wrap up a little bit early. Pardon? Any extras?